If I'd known there'd be so many of you, we would have gone to the Classic Center. It is my honor to be here tonight with Hendershot in Athens, Georgia. Thank you so much. As you know, we've got 26 days to victory. 26 days to turn out every vote we can, knock every door we can, call every person we know, call people we broke up with because we didn't like them, but they still know how to vote. We've got 26 days to change Georgia. Are you with me? Now I'm going to start with some serious stuff. I know a lot of you heard about the 53,000 voters who've had their voter registrations paused. They're in pending status. Now here's the thing. This is like deja vu all over again for me. Back in 2014, I started a little organization called the New Georgia Project. Because in 2013, they handicapped the Voting Rights Act. They eviscerated it by striking Section 5. That was the section that protected the right to vote in the South. That was the section that required that before you could strip someone of their democratic right to engage, you had to get permission. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision decided that there was no longer racism or bigotry in the South. Okay, you know, okay. I'm reporting the news, I am not making it. And so in 2014, as the leader of the New Georgia Project, we set out to start registering 800,000 unregistered people of color. But part of our responsibility was not just to get people registered, it was to make certain their franchise was real. And so I first tried to work with this guy who was the Secretary of State. His name is Brian Kemp. No. I called him. He actually sent staff over to help us. We followed their directions so effectively that we registered more than 80,000 people. But then we found out that he was refusing to process almost 40,000 of them. And we went to court. And it didn't work in the state court because state court said he had no obligation to actually do his job. But then we took him to federal court. And by 2017, he was forced to restore 34,000 illegally canceled registrations. The problem at the time was this thing called exact match that said that if you were a teacher who had a hyphenated last name, you better hope everybody remembered the hyphen. And if they dropped the hyphen, you could be told you weren't eligible to vote. And so when I read that story yesterday from the Associated Press, when I read it, I felt a chill because I know exactly what's happening. And I know the last time we had to fight him on this, it took 3 years. Well, we don't have 3 years to wait in Georgia. And we are going to fight for those 53,000, but the reality is we've got a secret weapon. You see, I've met the Secretary of State. I've fought him, and I know what his tricks are. And he's a one-trick pony when it comes to voter suppression. And that trick's not going to work this time. We got our 86,000 on the rolls, and this year there are more than 250,000, and now there are 1.9 million eligible registered Democrats who do not vote. But if we get them to vote, the 53,000 will have their voices lifted to the heavens and to Atlanta, and we will win this election. That's what we're going to do. You see, I am not a hip-hop person, but I believe the appropriate language to use here is that Brian Kemp is shook. Because he is looking at the same polls we're looking at, and he is seeing that he's not getting any daylight, that we're within the margin of error, but I don't think it's a margin of error. It's a margin of opportunity. And in this election, we have the opportunity to educate every child in the state of Georgia from cradle to career, regardless of family income and regardless of zip code. He knows that I'm not offering some gimmicks to try to convince teachers that I suddenly care about them, that I've been with them from the very beginning. That's why I'm going to be the public education governor of the great state of Georgia. And he knows read the 100 single-space pages on my website that I have detailed and concrete plans for how we build a thriving and diverse economy for all 159 counties in the state of Georgia. And he's a little worried because now I've been to all 159. He knows that I have a plan to guarantee that when our young people graduate from college, they do not graduate shadowed by debt, but instead graduate soaring on opportunity. I'm the only candidate with a plan. He knows that I have a plan to invest in renewable energy because I'm going to tell y'all a secret. Climate change is real. I'm the only candidate with a plan to harness renewable energy to create 25,000 to 45,000 good-paying jobs across the state of Georgia, and we're going to get it done under my leadership. He knows that's true. He knows that I want to create 22,000 apprenticeships throughout the state of Georgia, registered apprenticeships by 2022. And some folks on his side of the aisle have said, well, that's impossible. We can't do it. But the thing of it is, South Carolina is already at 17,000. I think y'all will agree, South Carolina can't beat us in anything. So Georgia's going to get it done. But we're also going to train more and invest more, give access to small businesses, because it's not enough that we bring big companies to Georgia. We need to make sure that Hendershots, if they decide they want a franchise, they've got a partner in the governor's office.
Hell yeah!
And I'm the only candidate who has a plan that's more than deregulation. Small businesses want investment. They want access to capital. They want someone who understands what it's like to go to a bank and be told no. Because not everyone can borrow $500,000 from a good friend and not pay it back. The rest of us need a governor who's willing to invest with us. And he's a little bit shook because he knows that on day one, my first responsibility as the next governor of Georgia is the expansion of Medicaid in the state of Georgia. I'm pretty good at math. I went to Spelman College. I went to the LBJ School at the University of Texas. I went to Yale Law School. And along the way, I learned a little bit of something about the economy and about healthcare finance, and I can tell you this. I learned basic math, and if somebody says, I'll give you $9 if you give me $1, you take the $9. And in the state of Georgia, if we are willing to invest $250 million in covering the poorest Georgians, we will draw down $3 billion a year, $8 million a day. We will save rural hospitals. We will provide access to health care to 500,000 Georgians. We will provide access to mental health care and substance abuse treatment. And for me, this is personal. I've got a younger brother who is on this terrible, vicious cycle. He has a drug addiction that made him drop out of college before his senior year, where his addiction to drugs was stronger than his ambition to become a lawyer. And my brother struggled with that addiction for more than a decade until finally he was incarcerated because he committed crimes to feed that addiction. I made sure my brother served time because he needed to be held accountable. But it was while he was in prison that we discovered that he also has bipolar disorder. Because unfortunately in the Deep South, the number one provider of mental health support is not our doctors, it's our jails. And that's where my brother got diagnosed. That's where he got the health care he needed. That's where he got the medication that made him stable and sober for the first time in almost 15 years. And if we lived in the right kind of place at the right time, that would be the story I could tell, that my brother got stable and sober and released on good behavior, and he became a productive member of society. But that's not Walter's story. Because the minute Walter walked out of prison, they took his health care. And they said, well, go get insurance through your job, but if you've got a record, The only job you get will never pay you health care. You're lucky if they pay you at all. And they said, well, get a stable place to live, but you can't get an apartment when your last address was a state penitentiary. And they said, well, take care of yourself, but he couldn't do it on his own. And so he relapsed and he reoffended and he was reincarcerated, and he is on this cycle that will not end until the state of Georgia and across the South we expand Medicaid, and we understand that we cannot simply be a state of retribution. We must be a state of redemption, and that is what we need. We've got a lot of work to do over the next 4 years. We've got to work on transit and transportation. We've got to make sure that there's affordable housing. We've got to invest in our people, and we've got to make certain that everyone in America knows that Georgia is closed to hate, because no RFRA will ever pass in the state of Georgia when I'm the leader of our state. We will not legalize discrimination, because they may start with the LGBTQ community, but they're coming after Muslims next, and the next group, and the next group, and we will be a state that says no to hate, and there will be no doubt that people of faith believe that faith belongs to us. It does not belong to the haters. That's why I'm going to be the next governor. But we're here tonight because I need your help. As I started, we're here tonight because we've got a little bit of work to do in 26 days. Because you've just seen that he's willing to stop 53,000 people from voting. But worse, he's expecting the rest of us to just stay home. Because they're going to roll after poll that has us in a dead heat, and they're going to whisper to each other that it's not real, that she's not going to transform the electorate, that we're not going to have new people voting, that young people don't vote, that black people don't vote, that brown people don't vote, that white people aren't going to vote for a black woman, but we are going to prove them wrong this year. We're going to prove that diversity is our strength and not a weapon to be used against us. We're going to prove that Democrats and Republicans and independents and people who don't know what they are but know they want better, that together we can change the state of Georgia. Will you help me get it done? Then I need you to knock doors for the next 26 days. I need you to make calls for the next 26 days. I need you to text your friends for the next 26 days. And I need you to show up at the polls starting October 15th and bring neighbors, bring friends, bring strangers, unless they vote for Brian Kemp, send them home. Everybody should vote. But I need you to do the work with me. And I need you to reach out to the folks that you know are waiting for someone to see them, waiting for someone to believe in them. I'm running for governor because I believe in all of Georgia. I believe in the undocumented. Because humanity doesn't require paperwork. I believe in standing up as an ally for the LGBTQ community, because you should not be fired from your job for who you love and who you are. I believe Christine Blasey Ford. And I believe to my core that we can do this. You see, when I was in high school, I graduated from high school in DeKalb County. I was the high school valedictorian. And when you're valedictorian in Georgia, as I assume half of you were, you know you get invited to meet the governor of Georgia. And I was very excited, less because of the governor, and more because I heard he lived in a mansion. And I watched a lot of Dynasty and General Hospital as a child. So I was very excited about going to this mansion. And so that morning, my parents got up, woke me up, and we got ready to go. We left my younger brothers and sisters at home. My older sister was already away in college. And we went outside, but we didn't get in our car because my family didn't have a car. We were what we refer to, technically we were working poor. My mom didn't like that. She called us genteel poor. We had no money, but we watched PBS and we read books. But my mom and my dad said we're going to go to this event, and so we did what we always did, which was get on public transit. We got on MARTA. And MARTA took us by bus to West Paces Ferry to that big mansion in Buckhead and those long black gates that run the length of the property. And as we got off the bus and walked across the street, my mom and dad had me sort of pushed over to the side so we could walk up the sidewalk and then walk up the driveway where cars were bringing in the valedictorians from all across the state of Georgia. And we get to the top of the driveway, and there's a guard station, and the guard comes out and he looks at me and he looks at my parents and he says, "This is a private event, you don't belong here." And so my father said, no, this is my daughter Stacey, she's one of the valedictorians. But he didn't check the checklist that was on his clipboard. He didn't ask my mom for the invitation that was in her purse. Instead, I remember as clear as day at 17 watching this man look over my shoulder at the bus as it pulled away. And he didn't smile at it, he didn't nod appreciatively, he had a sneer on his face. This look of disparagement as he thought about who could possibly arrive at this august event on a bus. And so when he looked back at me, he said, "I told you this is a private event, you don't belong here." Now I'm ready to believe him and start running, but my mother has my arm in a death grip. Because my parents needed me to understand in that moment that no one gets to determine your humanity but you. Now, what moved us to Georgia, I grew up, like I say, I'm Mississippi raised and Georgia grown, but it moved us, y'all cheer for everything. But what moved us to Georgia was my parents were going to Emory University to become United Methodist ministers, but they weren't pastors yet. And so they began to have a very vigorous conversation with this man about his decision-making skills, and my father may have mentioned where he thought that man would spend eternity if he didn't change his mind about me going inside. And so after a while, the gentleman did indeed check his checklist, and he found my name. But I tell you this story because I do not remember meeting the governor of Georgia. In 1991, I don't remember walking into that mansion and meeting my fellow valedictorians from across the state of Georgia, 180 school districts. The only clear memory I have of that day is a man standing in front of the most powerful place in Georgia, looking at me and telling me I don't belong. We have lived through 2 years of a leader telling us we don't belong, and we've got someone running in this election who tells a lot of us we don't belong. But we've got a chance to tell them something else. Because on November 6th, with you working with me and walking beside me and knocking harder and calling more and being louder and more engaged than ever before, we will open those gates wide when I become the governor of Georgia so no one ever doubts that they belong.